Welcome back, everybody. Today, I thought it'd be helpful to paint this simple boat scene. And what we're gonna do is practice painting wet into wet, painting positive and negative shapes, and also finding connections. I'm gonna do a simple drawing. And first, I wanna put my horizon line 2/3 to the top of the paper. You can see that the boat is about here on the horizon line. And so I'm going to do a quick sketch of this shape, and then the reflection will come out like that, and then we'll have the reflection of the mast as well. Looking in my reference, I want to erase the back of that line because it's going to be defined by that little bit of dark land in the distance that's darker than the boat. And I would rather define it with that shape than actually draw it with the pencil there. Let's go ahead and wet down our paper and we'll move into our first wash. The reason I'm wetting the paper down on the back and the front is that it gives me more time to paint wet into wet. And also, when you wet down both sides, your paper will lay flat to your surface. So if you don't like this approach, if it makes you uncomfortable, then go ahead, you can tape your paper down too and just wet the front of the paper. Now the first thing I want to do is mix in some of this warm color for the sky. I'm going to use some raw sienna and some permanent rose madder. Those two colors together. Let's see how that looks. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and cover all of my sky except the area right around my boat with that color. Just cover the whole paper back and forth. And there's some of that color that shines through the window of the boat. So I'm coming right down to the boat there. And now I'm going to continue this wash right down my paper. I'm coming right up to the boat, and I'm going to leave a little gap there for now. And as we're moving down the paper, we want to add more strength to this. So keep mixing in more of the same colors. And as we get a little closer to the bottom of the paper, I'm still strengthening this wash. And I want to add in a little bit of lavender. I'm going to start cooling this down a little bit as we get to the bottom of the painting. And I'm going back and forth, and I'm already getting a little bit of effect, some subtle effect of ripples in the water. Mixed in some cobalt blue and some lavender into what I already have. So as you get towards the bottom of your painting, you want bigger, thicker brush marks. And as you move up towards your boats, you want the brush marks to get thinner. Okay, so let's go back to our sky. We're going to come back down. We're layering some wet into wet paint. I'm going to wash my brush off. Take some lavender, some cobalt blue. Get a nice thick mixture of some of your cooler colors on your palette. Less water and more paint. Okay, let's go back up to our sky. Nice, quick brush stroke across the paper. I'm not trying to cover the whole thing. Leave some of that warmth behind. Remember, thicker brush strokes at the bottom, thinner as you move towards the top. You want a lot of paint for this part. Just going back and forth. Thicker, bigger brush strokes at the bottom, thinner as we move up. Just a few thin lines as we get up near our boat. While things are still damp, I'm going to take some lavender, some cerulean, cobalt blue, And this time I'm using a smaller synthetic brush. And the reason I'm doing that is because I don't want as much water on my brush this time. And what I'm doing now is laying in the lighter values of this boat. And I'll be going over some of this later, but I want to get this in now while the paper is still damp. Leaving a little bit of light on the edge of that boat. Just throwing in those cooler colors. And I'm just going to leave it at that for now. All right, our paper is still damp. And what we're going to do is put a few more strong brush marks near the bottom. We don't want to overdo this, but I think the foreground is going to need a little more strength. So I'm into this blue mixture I've already created. I'm mixing in some Payne's Gray. I want a few more brush strokes in the foreground here. This is the only time that we really get to paint wet into wet to this extent. And I like to take advantage of that when I can. So we're darkening the foreground, adding just a few more of these soft ripples in the water here. And that strength is so necessary to lead our viewer's eye into the scene. And one more right at the bottom. Just to make sure we're getting things as dark as we want them to be. So let's take a little break, let's let things dry, and then we'll be back to finish it up. If you have questions about watercolor supplies, take a look at my Watercolor Essentials Supplies Guide. I go through what brushes I use, what pigments I use, and talk about my paper and supplies. You can follow the link down below, or you can follow the link in my Instagram bio. Take a look at my free gift for you. Click on the link and get your Watercolor Supplies Guide. All right, my paper has had a chance to dry for the most part. I'm gonna go ahead and move in to the next phase here. So what I wanna do in this next phase is paint this little strip of land that's behind the boat, and that's actually going to help to define the boat. Remember, we left the back edge of this boat kind of undefined in this soft first wash. So this bit of land that we're going to paint back here is going to frame this boat in and start to give us some more strength in the scene as well. I'm going to take some lavender, mix it in with what I've already mixed in, and some earth tone. In this case, I'm going to use raw umber. Let's see what that looks like. All right, so I've loaded up my brush, and I can faintly see my horizon line here. And so one thing you want to think about is making sure that that line is flat. And so I'm going to paint the bottom of that line first. I'm going to keep reloading my brush. It can be handy to have a piece of scrap paper next to your painting. I'm taking my brush and I'm using the side of my brush. I want more of a broken edge for some of the tops of these trees here. So what we did with the back of this boat is we negatively painted into it. We negatively painted the boat, the back part of that boat. And that means we painted around it to define that shape. That boat needs to stand out a little bit more against the water. And so what I'm going to do here, I'm going to take this mixture and add some more blue to it, some cobalt blue. And I want to paint some strength for the front of that boat now. I'm going to take a damp brush and I'm going to soften this edge. And I'm letting it just kind of fade into nothing over here. Now this is the fun part, I think. We are going to paint this reflection, but we want the reflection to be connected to the bottom of the boat. So I'm mixing in some more of these cooler colors. And I don't want to get into painting every single complicated ripple in this reflection. So I want to just do kind of an impression of it. Just continue that wet edge. I want some thicker paint on my brush. Just thick paint. And I want to go to where this boat meets the water. And I want to reinforce where that boat meets the water. Again, we're painting wet into wet. And we're setting that boat right down on the water there. Okay, and I'm going to take that thick paint again. And I'm going to add a few darks onto the boat. And now I want to paint the mast up here. And for that, I'm going to switch to a rigger brush. And this is good to practice on a scrap sheet of paper too. Getting these nice straight lines, figuring out what your mark is going to look like before you paint it. Another thing you can do is turn your painting sideways. And while this is still damp, I want to paint the reflection of this in the water. You know, less is more, really, with a lot of these things. Some of these really fine lines can add something nice to the scene. And for that, some really fine, sharp lines on a small piece of paper, I'm turning to this Steinwriter's brush. And if you're interested in this, you can find it in my Amazon link down below. But I love this little brush. It holds a lot of water, and it really gives me a lot of control for some of these small little rigging wires and things like that. All right, the last thing I want to do is I want to add in just a few, one of these lines in the water. It's important to keep practicing those fundamental skills. Even if you're not doing a full-size painting, practice some simple scenes that get you painting wet into wet, get you thinking about timing, and some of the things that we talked about today. And before you go, I wanted to mention, if you haven't checked out my free video lesson, How to Avoid Overworking Your Painting, take a look at it. You can follow the link below. You can get to it in my bio and Instagram. So I've got some really good feedback from this lesson, and this is a video lesson that helps address something that I had to work through quite a bit when I was learning how to paint watercolor, and that is overworking my painting. I talk through 8 different tips to help you avoid overworking your painting. You can follow the link below, take a look at it, and I hope it can help you out as well. So thank you guys for being here today. Keep on practicing, moving forward, and growing as an artist, and I will see you next time.